I just never understand why Israel wants to provoke this war when it becomes increasingly more obvious how vulnerable they are. If they can't stop, Houthi missiles coming in that are being fired one at a time, why would you want to start a war with Iran? Don't they understand that this will be the end of Israel? They just don't seem to care, or
Well,
they don't know?
yeah, they don't believe this. Obviously they don't.
How
I
can
think
they not? How can they not
yeah.
believe it?
Well, I think there are at least a couple of things going on. Maybe I'll point to three things. One was, well, first is the interest, the career interest of Netanyahu, and the interest of his coalition to remain in power. They are under a lot of pressure. Netanyahu in particular. It's just like he can. His enemies are closing in around him. There are these corruption trials, and there's a lot of anger over the failure to secure the release of the remaining hostages, and there, other things going on. Again, passions are very, very high within Israel. A lot of that passion is directed against Netanyahu and his ruling coalition. So he feels like he has his back against the wall, and that can be. We alluded to this earlier in a kind of different context, but it's just like when you're in that position, you're more likely to take reckless actions. In a state of desperation, you can do almost anything. And even if he really thinks that he might be risking the nation, he might do it because he's that kind of person. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, though, is that I think they have this sense of invincibility. They're on a roll. Again, we saw what happened in Lebanon and in Syria in particular. It was such a shock to everybody. I think it was, obviously the Israelis were involved in bringing it about, but I think they were shocked by their own success. And so they get a sense, when this happens, you have a string of victories. It doesn't, it doesn't matter who the leader is, that it's very easy for him to get this sense that, okay, yeah, I'm invulnerable. And I'm going to stop listening to the doubters. So they were telling me to exercise caution, but look, they were wrong. I'm right. And now there are people again telling me to exercise caution. I'm not going to listen to them. We can do it. We did it in Syria. We did it, to a lesser extent in Lebanon. There's no reason why we can't do it. And we have the Americans behind us. We always know the Americans will fall in line, even if they wring their hands sometimes. So I think that's part of it. And then, let's see, what was the third point I was going to make? But right now, at the moment, it'll probably come back to me real soon. But anyway, I think those are the two main points.
Okay, well,
yeah, no, I guess also it's just that I think maybe this is it. It's just that as I think we've seen in Europe and in the United States in connection with Ukraine, that governments can become really victims of their own narratives. That you invest so much in constructing a certain narrative, which again paints the enemy as weak and yourself as strong, that. That ends up kind of just creating this. There's this feedback loop. You have your intelligence agencies and different government administration officials are leaking information. Now it's information that's really skewed, in favor of your narrative, again, of your own strength and the weakness of your enemy. But it comes out and it's blared out through the media to the public and everybody, including a lot of these different politicians who have a say in making decisions, and they really believe it, and that just tends to reinforce this tendency already. So I think, again, all those three things together make it possible that, yeah, they might really do this.
So, do you think that Israel will carry out a strike against Iran? I think they're threatening to attack both Yemen and Iran. Do you think that Netanyahu will?
It's possible. I think they know that they can't really. They really can't do anything significant against Iran, and that it's quite risky. But he may just calculate again. This would be his way of bringing in the U.S. in. That he'd do it He's always trying to provoke Israel. We know about the earlier provocations.
Provoke Iran.
Oh, yeah, provoke Iran. Thank you for the correction. He's always trying to provoke Iran. And there was that recent explosion of the port. We discussed that, I know, in an earlier program. And I said, yeah, it could be an accident. Accidents happen. And I'll say that's true. But you're right. It was very, very suspicious. And I think that there's a very good chance that was another attempt, at sabotaging the negotiations and provoking Iran. It's clear that actually Netanyahu wants Iran to strike Israel. Now, his gamble is that, okay, one of these provocations will lead to retaliation by Iran against Israel, some significant retaliation, that maybe does some real damage to Israel and kills a number of Israeli civilians. But it doesn't have to be civilians, even if the Iranians are very, very careful to select military targets. If they do something significant, it doesn't matter to the West. IDF soldiers are sacred too. Well, that will create pressures that the U.S. administration, any U.S. administration, will be unable to resist. And then he'll get his much longed for full-scale attack on Iran, a U.S.-led operation. I think that's the gamble. So yeah, he might do it. He might just go ahead. Okay, it'll be kind of a bust. It won't, but maybe he can cause some damage enough that the Iranians feel that they simply have to respond in a significant way, and then all hell breaks loose.
What could the U.S. even do if there was, when we declared war on Iran? I mean, as soon as this happens, all of our bases in the Middle East, gone. We have no control over the region. Our Navy can't get close to them, or they're gone.
Right.
So what does that leave us with?
Yeah, well, again, I think that, that's why it hasn't happened. Again, it's just that again and again, when presidents have wanted to, have really considered, and we know that George W. Bush, Biden, and now Trump have all carefully considered it. And so far, all of them have come right up to it and then pulled back. Because I think, what you just said is what they've heard. Hey, this is what's going to happen, Mr. President. I'm just telling you this. There are people that will tell him the truth, and that's still, we need to be thankful for that. Now, I think this would give them an incentive, I think, to try to carry out a decapitation strike or a massive air assault that would knock out a lot of their air defenses. That would be the attempt. I don't think they can do it, but but maybe there's a chance that they could. And then if they really are just hell bent on it, they just might seize on that possibility. It's just like if we send in half the U.S. Air Force, and we drop 2,000 pound, or even I think they have up to 20,000 pound bombs, on all these different sites, will just cause such damage that they'll just have to surrender, and that we will have devastated their air defense system and also their ability to retaliate. So this is actually the scary thing, is that they have such strong retaliatory capabilities that the U.S., that the argument may be that these Iran war hawks are making is, we can't go in, take any half measures. We have to go all out. And we've heard some of that talk from Trump himself. They'll be bombed like they've never been, like nobody's ever been bombed before. And that's really scary talk. It's just, I kind of wonder about my tour. That's.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if they do, like you said, I don't know if the U.S. just doesn't understand that they're just too lost in their own hubris of the capabilities of Iran. Like, even if you did send off our whole Air Force to bomb them, there's not going to be any landing strips for them to come back to when they take off, right? Iran will immediately know that this is happening, a huge operation, tons of planes, tons of missiles, whatever it is in the sky. Well, they got thousands and thousands of missiles that we can't shoot down. So they will take down wherever these planes are taking off from, right? And then,
again, if they're takeoff from, they probably would be taking off from Diego Garcia, which I believe is outside of Iranian missile range.
I've heard otherwise. I mean,
Okay.
we'll see when it actually happens.
Yeah.
I've heard that. I know they have drones that can make it that far.
Yeah.
And apparently there's this, I forgot to pronounce, KH Kormormar missile 2 with a lighter warhead should be able to. I'm not a military
Yeah,
expert,
but
I don't know.
if it's not outside of the range, it's just, at the very, very farthest limit of where they can go. So their ability to cause damage to that airport is limited. I think there's no question about it. But then it's just one airport, so it's hard to launch an entire, to fleet from an airport like that. You need more than one site. And I think you're right. It's just like the military bases in the Persian Gulf. The Iranians have already made it clear that they would be legitimate targets if there was an attack launched against them. So they would have only Diego Garcia, and then also these Gulf countries this time are making it clear. We'll see if they actually hold to it, that they don't want their airspace to be used for this, because they know what might happen. And again, we had the Saudi. Was it the foreign minister, or it was actually the crown prince himself that went to Iran recently and met with Khamenei and declared that they stood side by side. This is things have really changed since the past. And not only is Iran stronger, militarily and economically, but they also they have the diplomatic support that they didn't have before. They were really quite isolated several years ago, and now they're not. And so it's going to complicate any sort of attack, is that the U.S. probably won't be able to use those air bases, or there's a good chance that they won't be able to use those ones that are closer to Iran, much closer. So instead they have, so it's sort of these air bases become all liability and without being assets, They're targets for the Iranians, but the U.S. can't actually use them.
This war would just be so horrible for the United States. It's amazing that it might actually happen, though. It just goes to show the amount of control Israel does have over our country if this is possible. There's no benefit for us in this war at all. And the crazy thing is that it's actually easy to end. It's easy to de-escalate it. It's just say, stop, Israel. We're not going to be complicit in this. As soon as Yemen carried out the strike on Ben Gurion Airport, the first thing that Netanyahu said, well, we got to attack Iran. Iran's the one backing them. Well, no one talks about Israel being backed by the United States. And if Israel is carrying out a genocide using our bombs, our weapons, then this is our genocide too. That this is that we are we are so involved in this, and we have the ability to end it at any point in time. It's such an easy thing to avoid all-out destruction, potential World War III. Who knows what might happen if we go to war with Iran? All we have to say is and it's just the moral thing to do. It's like, even if you just want to, October 7th, and you believe all the atrocities that happened there, the dead babies, the rapes, whatever, clearly you should be able to say, after 18 months of now, who knows, hundreds of thousands of people dead, 70% women and children, a population being pushed to starvation, surely this is enough, right? Why can't we just stop? Why can't we just have it stop? It's the most moral, common sense thing, and the fact that we are avoiding it. And whenever we talk about the Houthis, we never talk about why they're doing it. They're doing it because of the genocide in Gaza, and they have proven that they're good to the word. As soon as there was a ceasefire, they stopped. It's just so ridiculous that we might go to war when there's just the easiest solution possible in front of us.
Right. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's a moral. Ending this conflict and ending our support for Israel is a moral thing to do, without a question. But it's also the rational thing to do. It's a self-interested thing to do, because we have sustained a very serious blow to our reputation. Our soft power has been greatly reduced by this, and it's diminishing by the day. So, we have every rational incentive to say, okay, enough is enough, right? But again, the problem, Israel really has a hold on it over us, and it's yeah, I mean, you can look to the power of Israel, through, but you also have to look at ourselves. We are willing accomplices. I mean, there are a lot of these really nutty supporters of Israel. They're not even Jewish in many cases. Like I think who's the guy masked, the congressman from Florida? He's marches around in a IDF uniform. He's a Gentile. We just have a lot of these nuts, and Mike Waltz is another example of that. Yeah, So anyway, yeah, you're right, but it's just this commitment, or this, let's say that, okay, yeah, we have subjugated ourselves to Israel, but so much of it has been done willingly. It's not like we ever had to. Going all the way back to the USS Liberty incident, it was a decision by Johnson. He didn't have to make the decision, but he decided to actually cover for Israel at that time. And ever since then, we have been kind of a willing vassal, you could almost say, of Israel.